Hello and welcome to the Controller's Office training opportunity where we're going to discuss how to use the Finance Intranet and HCM Distribution. Today's agenda, we're going to talk about what is the hub and the various resources you can find here, including the Finance Intranet and the 4 tools, reporting tools that you can find here, including the GL Dashboard, the Grant Dashboard, GL Summary, and GL Activity. We're also going to discuss HCM Payroll Distribution, and this is the tool you can use to find any information regarding payroll and salary and fringe distribution. We're going to talk about where you can find additional resources and who you can contact if you have any questions. So what is the hub? The hub is the internal reporting site that houses the various reporting tools and resources used to research any PeopleSoft Finance transactions and retrieve account balance information, whether it's related to actuals or budget. The 2 main sections we're going to cover today are Finance Intranet and HCM Distribution. The hub also provides access to legacy financial data, and that's data prior to our conversion into PeopleSoft Finance. So that's fiscal year 2016 and prior data. The one thing we do want to point out, however, is that if you do need to ever access that financial data, you will need to use the PeopleSoft crosswalk to translate the account numbers because they are different in that legacy system. The legacy system used what we call a debt fund chart field accounting string, which is different in PeopleSoft Finance. So there is a crosswalk that will translate that information for you, so be sure to use that should you ever need it. And if you have questions, you can always reach out to the Controller's Office or any of your business administrators. So this is what the hub looks like. This is the home page for the hub, and you'll notice here you can find the 2 main sections we're going to talk about, which is the Finance Intranet, HCM Distribution, and then the legacy information is located right here. If you need to see payroll information, you can go to Payroll Reports, and that's all the payroll information prior to PeopleSoft HCM. And if you need other financial information related to expenses, you can go to the Legacy Intranet, that link located right above. So what is the Finance Intranet? So the Finance Intranet provides access to these 4 tools. It includes the GL Dashboard. The GL Dashboard provides current and available balance information related to budget and actual comparisons. It gives you a detailed monthly statement of accounting distribution related to accounting transactions that have occurred. You also have the Grant Dashboard, and this is the newest tool that's been created specifically for grants. Those are projects that start with a 1 located in what we call our USC SP business unit, and it provides the ability to view expenses grouped into categories as shown on our standard USC invoice that we submit to sponsors, unless of course the sponsor requires a unique invoice. We also have the GL Summary, and this is a more advanced reporting tool that allows users to filter, group, and burst data in a variety of ways. And then the last tool we will talk about today is the GL Activity, and it provides the same versatility as all the tools above as found in the GL Summary, but it provides that detailed PeopleSoft transaction journal level information, and it's the last level of activity that you'll see before actually jumping in to PeopleSoft to see the actual transactions. So then what is HCM Distribution? The HCM Payroll Distribution is a tool that you can use to access a listing of all the employees in a department from the payroll system. So given a set of parameters or search criteria, it will give you all the payroll based on that search. So the payroll information that it pulls will be the listing of employees, including their pay group, the funding chart field, the gross earnings, and the cost of each of the employees' benefits to the department. And again, this is the employer's share of those benefits. We do want to point out that the HCM distribution is in the same format as the old legacy payroll hub. So it should look very familiar. So if you're familiar with how the legacy payroll hub was displayed, It's very similar. We did add some additional search criteria and options to enhance your reporting capability. So who can use this tool? Anyone, really. Business managers, budget officers, grant administrators, PIs, whoever has access is free to use this tool. The goal is transparency and having information at your fingertips. So how can you get there? You can access it by going to this link. And if you are ever having trouble remembering what the link is, we always encourage you to start at the Office of the Controller webpage. And there's a section on the right-hand side that says Financial Access. And all the most up-to-date links are right there on the right-hand side. And you can also access it from that page. We do want to point out that users will have the same access as it relates to departments and projects as they have in PeopleSoft Finance. But if you need to update your access or request additional access, you can do that by completing the Finance Access form, and here's a link to that form. So the first tool we're going to talk about today is the Finance Intranet, the GL dashboard. So that's the very first link. And as we mentioned before, the GL dashboard will provide access to current and available balances as it relates to budget to actual comparisons and detailed monthly statements of any transactions that have occurred. And you can search by department and fund. You can enter in a project number, and then you can select the actual period that you would like to see. We always recommend that you are deliberate in what period that you want to see as it relates to fiscal period. And we always recommend that you check that display account chart field checkbox because that will actually expand all the categories and give you the detailed account codes that make up those categories. So in this example, we're going to look at Department 155001, and we're going to look at their A funds, A001, which is their unrestricted A funds for fiscal year 1920. So we're going to look at the whole fiscal year. Another little feature that we kind of wanted to point out is that if you're unsure where to start, you can click in the available links, which are these blue hyperlinks right here, and select from a list of options. So if you're not sure exactly what department it is, you can click on department and you can scroll through a whole list of options to then limit your criteria and your returned results. And I always like to remind people that this is view-only access, so you can't break it. So don't be shy about clicking around. The worst thing that will happen is it may freeze your browser and then just completely exit out and start over. But you can't break it, so don't be shy about exploring the different options as it relates to what happens if I do this or what happens if I click here. You can't break it, so feel free to explore all of these different things to find, what works best for you. And if you're not sure if, the returned options are correct or the validity or accuracy of the options that you returned are, or if you're capturing everything, then you can always reach out to us here at the controller's office to make sure that you're pulling everything. One thing that we do want to point out, though, as it relates to making sure that you're pulling all of that budget information, when it comes to department, if you have the project number in mind, you just need to enter in the project number. You don't have to put in any of the other information here. So, for example, if you're looking at a 8,000 project, like a Magellan grant or something like that, you would just put in 8,000, 1, 2, 3, 4 in this project box, and you wouldn't need to fill in any other information outside of what particular fiscal period you wanted to see and submit. If you wanted to look at a particular department, you could put in that information, and then you could leave the rest of the information blank so that you're pulling everything. You don't need to put in activity in class. We actually wanted to foot stomp that in order to make sure that you're pulling in all the budget relevant information, make sure that you leave the class box blank, because budget journals don't require this field to be filled in. So sometimes it would include it and sometimes it may not. So to make sure that you're pulling the most up-to-date in all of the applicable budget journals, make sure you leave this blank so that you're getting that true balance. So in this example, like I said, we're looking at the College of Engineering unrestricted operating fund. And the first thing that you'll notice when you put in that information is that you'll get a list of who those department approvers are. We like to point this out because if you ever have questions or you need additional information and you're not really sure who to start with to reach out to, if you know a little bit or a little piece of the information, you can go here to find out, well, who should I contact to get pointed in the right direction. So for example, I tell business managers a lot of times, if you are needing a correction related to payroll, but you don't have access to that department's payroll, but it's one of your employees, maybe they're dual funded, and the payroll that needs correcting is related to an engineering account, but you don't know who to contact over there, then you could certainly use Finance Intranet to see who the department approvers are for that particular department. And you could at least have a starting point of who to reach out to. It may not be them that you'll be dealing with, but they should at least get you pointed in the right direction. And if you were to enter in a project number, the project team would populate here. So the GL dashboard, as it relates to the data that would actually populate, it provides you the budgeted resources along with actual resources. The first column is the budget, and the second column is actuals. And you can see that this is returning total resource. It also gives you budgeted uses as well as actual uses and the available balance. So this column gives you the available balance, and it summarizes it by category and by account code. And it gives you the ability to drill down on any of these balances, whether it's a budget or actual. So you'll notice that all of these are hyperlinks. So you can click and drill down on all of those figures. And then if you continue to scroll down, you'll also get the statement details for that particular fiscal period that you selected. And if you notice, for this particular period, it looks like there were a lot of retro payroll entries taking place or retro funding changes. And anytime you see hyperlinks here, that's additional opportunity for you to drill down. Anytime you see a paperclip, you can also, that indicates that there's an attachment. So once you click on that hyperlink, it'll take you into PeopleSoft, and there'll actually be additional documents that you can review supporting that entry. Now we're going to go into a live demonstration on how to use the GL dashboard. As I mentioned before, if you're not exactly sure how to access the Finance Intranet, I always recommend that you start here. This is the Office of the Controller website. And the section I was telling you about is right here on the right-hand side, and it says Access Financial Systems. And the link that you would want to touch is this one that says Finance Intranet. If you click that link, it's going to take you exactly to what we're talking about right now, and that's the hub. So then from here, you're going to select Finance Intranet, and we're going to start with the GL dashboard. So the example, so here's the blue links that we were talking about. And as I mentioned, you can use these links to further drill down. So I select the operating unit. If you depending on what information that you have, or if you're not sure, if you just, you know what department you are, but you're not sure, well, what operating unit do I fall in? You can use this to learn that information. And again, you just hit the back button to take you back to the main page. But again, depending on what your access, it may determine what you're able to see. But again, feel free to use these as you wish. So going back to our example, we're going to use, and you'll also notice that as you're typing, additional criteria comes up that matches based on what you're typing. So again, if you only know the first four numbers, you can help determine what that item is or help you near the results until you can find it. So in our example, we're going to look at 1550 01, which was the College of Engineering. We're going to look at their unrestricted A funds. And the period we were looking at was FY 1920, but you'll notice you can go back further. You can go to FY 1819. You can select the actual period. And we're going to display account chart field. Well, I'll show you what it looks like before. And as we noticed, you can see who the approvers are. And without that checkbox checked, everything is summarized. And we can see total resources and total uses and the balance. And then because we didn't select the actual fiscal period, there are no transactions down here. But if we were to select the actual fiscal period, for example, June, it would actually return all of this information. So we can see retro payroll entries, we can see unemployment and workers' comp, and we could drill down on all of this information. A lot of transactions. And then if we display account chart field, we can further drill down and see the account activity. So again, we can see classified salaries, unclassified employees. We can see the specific account codes that make up that information in those categories. So other ways that you can use this tool, let's say we want to look at chemistry. And we'll keep looking at their A funds, but we're going to look at June, and we'll keep it displayed. And as I mentioned before, you can drill down even into the budget transactions. So let's take a look at, let's say you wanted to know whether or not you were reimbursed for a particular travel as it relates to budget. You could drill down and see that information without necessarily having to go ask, all on your own. So let's say 52024. Did I pass it already? I did. So let's say you wanted to know whether or not you were reimbursed for employee domestic travel as it related to your budget. So you could click down on that button and you'll notice that it takes us to another tool, which is our GL activity. And then we could see what budget transactions took place. And we could either use the line description to determine whether or not we were reimbursed or if that budget was given back to fund our travel or what have you. And as we mentioned, you have these journal IDs right here. You can also click on these references and see that additional detail to determine whether or not, well, yes, that was, but was that trip or was it another trip? I don't know. Because you might have a lot going on. You don't know if it was for this project or another trip. So you could always drill down on this detail and see exactly what it was for. It's going to ask you to sign into PeopleSoft. And once you do that, you just hit search. It's already going to populate that information for you. And then you can see there's an attachment. So if you open up that attachment, you can actually read what was it for. Oh, that was for my trip to Madrid or whatever the case may be. Or no, that wasn't the right trip that I was thinking of, so I still need to request it or they still need to process it, depending on what's going on. Oh, no, that was recruitment of grad students. That wasn't what, so you can kind of use that information to determine what it is you need to do or not need to do or what's been completed and not completed. So it's a great resource. Again, the goal is for you to have information at your fingertips. So again, that's both budget and actuals that you can drill down into. So if we go back to the main page, you can also use this, as we mentioned before, to look at your USC IP projects, and those are projects that start with a 8,000. So 800 and your given project number. And this is actually the preferred tool to look at those. So in this example, we're going to look at 3265. And let's see what's going on in the current month. How about that? And we will hit submit. And we're going to leave this checked. And we can see the start and the current end dates for this project. We can see the name, and we can see who the current approver listed on this project is. We can see how much cash we have left on this grant, or the remaining balance, as well as our total resources and our total uses. So how much have we spent against this project or on this project, and then our remaining balance. So how much do we have left to spend? And we can drill down into any of these figures to get additional information, to verify whether or not all the expenses we expected to hit have hit, and to review any pending charges. So again, just another great way to use this tool. And you can go back and view previous periods or current periods, so on and so forth. So that is just a quick overview of the GL dashboard. So just some quick key takeaways. Make sure you always select the fiscal period, just to make sure that you are returning the results that you want. And make sure you check that display account chart field checkbox so that you can see the details of the account codes. And then when you're reviewing that GL dashboard for budget purposes, make sure you leave that class field empty so that you're pulling all of the journals associated with the budget and you're getting the true up-to-date balance. And just remember, you can drill down into any of those expenses, including payroll. And you can also drill down into the budgeted transactions. And this is the recommended tool to use when reviewing USC IP projects. Again, those are the ones that start with an 8. And then we always recommend that you use the grant dashboard when reviewing grant projects. And those are the ones that fall in USC SP, are the projects that start with a 1. And that's the next tool that we're going to go over. So the next one is the grant dashboard, and that's the second link here. And this provides the ability to view expenses grouped into categories as shown on our standard USC invoice that we commonly or most commonly submit to sponsors. Again, if the sponsor requires their own unique invoice, it may not be the one that they necessarily will receive, but I would say approximately 85 to 90% of the time this is the one that sponsors receive. So you would begin, you'll notice that the top is very similar, and it provides you the same information as the GL dashboard. It's just formatted slightly different. So you would begin by entering in the project that you would like to see along with the fiscal period. And you also have the additional option to search by contract. So if you have a large award that has multiple projects, instead of having to run each individual project number, you could enter in the contract number right here, and it will return all the values associated or all the projects associated with that contract. And so some of you may not be aware of what our standard USC invoice looks like, so we thought we would take a minute to show you what that looks like. Our invoice template is on the left, and you'll notice that the categories line up exactly, and the budget matches in the same categories. We do break out scholarships in the grant dashboard, so that is one slight difference. But otherwise, the budget lines up exactly, along with the life-to-date expenses as it relates to the cumulative amount that shows on the invoice. And you'll also notice the current amount. This invoice is through April, and this grant dashboard is for the period of April, and you'll notice that they tie exactly. The total cost for this invoice is $4,100. The total amount shown here is $4,100. Another great feature about this invoice is it also includes cost share. The grant dashboard also shows you cost share. So you'll notice that the total cost share, cumulative cost share booked on this grant is $50,000, and the total cost share booked per the grant dashboard is $50,000. The grant dashboard will also give you all the pertinent information related to the grant, including the project number, the sponsor, the start and end date. And if you're wondering, well, what's the contract number? It's this number. The contract number will start with CON and then be a numeric value. And then most importantly, it'll also give you the project team. So that will be your PI, any co-PIs, if there's a business manager associated with it or identified specifically, and then your CGA. So your CGA is your post-award accountant, and that is the person here centrally that is billing and invoicing and doing any financial reporting associated with this award. So we always like to point that out because if there's ever a question that comes up relating to invoicing or financial reporting, this is the person that needs to be immediately looped in regarding any questions related to that. So you can always come here to find out if you're not sure who that person is. You can enter in your project number and you can see exactly who is listed in that CGA role and you can contact them. So once you enter in the data or your project number, this is just a quick synopsis of what that data would look like. This is with the account chart field box checked, and you'll see that you have budget, current month activity, life-to-date expenses, and then it gives you the balance. And of course the balance is the budget minus the life-to-date expenses. And then if you have any encumbrances, it will then further calculate the available balance. And then it will also pull in, if you have cost share, it will pull in what your cost share budget is along with what has been recorded to date and give you, calculate the remaining balance there as well. I do want to point out that the account codes do populate above the category summary, just so you don't get thrown off by the way it's displayed. And as we mentioned before, you can drill down just like in all the other tools. Here on any of the expenses listed, all of those amounts are hyperlinks. So for example, if we wanted to drill down and see, well, what did I spend $327 on in supplies? You could click on that link and it would actually take you down into the GL activity and show you what transactions make up that $327. And as we can see here, it's an expense report, purchase card expense, and then an RQ or internal charge is the other transaction. So then you can even further drill down if you don't recall, like what did I spend? What P card expense was it, or whose P card, or you know what specific? I need additional information because I don't recall. You can click on the reference, and that will take you directly into PeopleSoft so that you can see more details. The one thing we do want to remind everyone is that this reference is to the entire expense report. So there may be additional charges on that expense report that had nothing to do with your particular project. So in this example, you'll notice items or rows 1, 2, and 4 were charged to a different project. The only item that was applicable to ours and was charged to our project was this third item right here for $227, and that's what's shown. So don't get thrown off if you click on this reference link and a whole list of items pops up and it's like, oh, this shouldn't be on my project. Just make sure that you pay attention to the project number in the project column. So for the next expense, we could click on the journal ID and see more information related to, well, what was that for? And again, it drills you into PeopleSoft, and we can see, oh, well, that was a software billing from November from Do It. And there is an attachment, so you could go even further to see what type of supporting documentation was attached for that expense. And as we mentioned before, you also have the ability to drill down into the payroll detail by clicking on the HCM link that will take you directly into the HCM Distribution tool. So again, you click on that hyperlink, and then it takes you to the GL activity, which will then show you the journal IDs associated with that entry, and then you click on the reference, and it will take you directly to the HCM distribution page and will list any employees associated with that entry. In this example, it looks like it was just one particular employee, but for some of the larger grants, That journal might be much larger, and the link may take you to a whole listing of employees that make up that amount. Some other great features about the grant dashboard, we've also included burn rates at the bottom just to assist you with managing your award. The first rate that we've included is the total budget divided by the life of the project. So in this case, that would be the total budget of $500,000 divided by 24 months, the total life of the project, to give you, just if you were to spend the total budget evenly over the life of the project, about how much should you be spending. The next rate that we give you is the life-to-date expenses divided by the months to date. So in this example, we pulled the information for April, which is 16 months. So on average, you're spending about $12,000. And again, these are just ratios for you to use as you deem fit to kind of help manage, how am I spending? Your monthly budget burn rate divided by total budget will give you this percentage, 4.1. And then life-to-date monthly burn rate divided by your monthly budget burn rate would give you 57%. And again, these are just to be used to help you see the rate at which the budget is being spent and to help you develop a spending strategy, not just at the beginning of the award, but also throughout the life of the award, and help you track spending on a periodic basis against, your budget and make any adjustments as you deem necessary. These are meant to be helpful, but we realize that depending on what your award is for and the type of awards you have and what kind of expenses you have in your budget, it may or may not be as helpful as it would be for others. Because if you have large equipment purchases, for example, or tuition, it's going to cause spending spikes that may skew the rates. So now we're going to go into a live demonstration of how to use the grant dashboard. And again, going back to the hub, Finance Intranet, grant dashboard. And we're just going to walk through the project that we selected. So we're going to do project 1000-8822. We're going to select the period of April. We're going to go ahead and display account chart field, and we're going to hit submit. As we mentioned before, all of your project team information will be up here. It'll give you the start and end dates, your contract number, your project name, who your sponsor is, and then it'll give you the account codes associated with the various categories as you're spending it. And if there's cost share, that'll populate. And then your burn rates are located right down here. And just to show you, again, if we wanted to drill down into any of this information, like for supplies, for example, you could click on that information. And again, you'll notice that it's taken us to the GL activity, and we could see what transactions make up that amount. And we can see that there is that P-card transaction. And if we click on that, it takes us directly into PeopleSoft. And then it will pull the query associated with that expense report. And you'll notice, just like in the screenshot, there were 4 charges associated with that expense report, but only this third one is associated with our project 1000-8822. These other charges went to 9355. So then if we go back and we wanted to know what this was, we could click on the journal ID. It would take us back into PeopleSoft and would take us here. And we could see that, and we could click on the attachment if we would like to see additional information. And we do want to point out that PI should also have access to run this information and see it. And then if we go back, that is the overview of the grant dashboard. And again, you can look at any period that you want to see, and you can have it summarized without all the account information. As such, if you wanted to look at June, you could look at June. To see what kind of activity is taking place. So that is just a quick overview of the grant dashboard and how to drill down. So just some key takeaways. Again, make sure that you select that fiscal period and that you use that display account chart field, and the balance will equal the budget minus the life-to-date expenses. And you can drill down into any of those expenses just like you can on the GL dashboard. And remember, if you're looking at cost share, that's the portion of cost not provided by the sponsor. Those are the expenses that USC is expected to be providing to the project. And most sponsors expect cost share to be charged in ratio throughout the life of the project. So if you're finding that you're halfway through the project and you have not accumulated or booked any cost share, that's an indication that you need to be asking questions and looking into, what is your anticipated cost share? Is it all salary and fringe? Is it the purchase of a piece of equipment? Things of that nature, and make sure that you're have a plan in place to get that booked. And again, just a reminder that the person listed in the CGA role is your post-award accountant, and that's the person here centrally that handles all the financial reporting and invoicing. And if you ever receive any invoicing questions or financial reporting questions, those should be routed to your PAA. And this is the preferred tool when reviewing grants. And again, those are the projects that start with a 1 and are in our USC SP business unit. So now we're going to move on to how to use the GL summary. The next tool located within Finance Intranet. And this tool provides a more advanced reporting tool that will allow you to filter, group, and burst data. And you'll notice there's a lot more options here as it relates to searching and pulling data. In this example, you'll notice that we are looking just at Department 130200, which is chemistry, and we're just going to look at their F funds. And we are going to total by department and account. And so if we go back, you'll notice that we had it burst by total 2 for February. And we're looking at just their travel accounts. So we put in 5202 and the percentage sign just to pull accounts related to travel. And so the burst by total 2, which is account, will give us that information summarized by account. So this is what it would look like. You can see that it's pulling in the various types of travel. We got domestic travel, foreign travel, and it's given us the open balance, the life-to-date budget, if there was any current month activity, the fiscal year actual, along with the life-to-date actual. And if there's anything listed in the encumbrance, that means there's pending liquidation of travel that's outstanding. Now we're going to jump right into the live demonstration. And another way you can access it, you can just do the drop down and go directly to GL Summary. So if we're going to mirror what we saw on the slide, we would enter in chemistry, F1000, which would be their federal grant funds. And we would do just their travel. And I'm going to use the percent sign to pull in all those accounts. And then we going to go back to February before COVID kind of shut down all the travel. And we're going to do total 1, defaults to department. We're going to do total 2 by account. And then we're going to burst by account, or summarized by account. So if we do submit, you can see that it's given us the various accounts summarized by the type of account. So we got student travel, employee travel, consultant, and just like everywhere else, you can drill down into all of these amounts and see the actual transactions. Now let's say I don't want to see F funds. Let's say I want to see E funds. So let's do E, and there's more than one E. So I want to see all their E funds travel. But I want to summarize it by fund. So I will leave account, and I want it to burst by total 1 fund. You can also do that. So now it's going to give me, for all the various E funds that they have, all the applicable travel account codes that they have. So their startup E fund looks like they have quite a few travel accounts. And their incentive. Not a lot of activity, but again, just another way to view the data. Another option, let's say you just want to look at all expenses for an entire operating unit. Maybe you don't want to get down to that level. You just want to look at an entire operating unit. You can do none all the way down. Sorry. And then let's just look at current. If you just wanted to see, hey, what's going on with all my expenses? For e-funds. It can summarize all that information for you as well. And it will give you the current, the open balance, current month, fiscal year to date, and life to date for every expense that's occurred on the entire operating unit's e-funds. So a multitude of ways that you can use this information. Now let's say you wanted to see it by fund and then by account, to give you a little bit more detail. Then you could, now it's bringing you the information by each fund, what accounts, what expense accounts have been charged and used. And some obviously have a lot more than others, depending on how big or small that e-fund is. So again, just a variety of ways that you can use the information. And I do want to point out that you have this CSV option, and that gives you the option to export all this information to Excel. And again, you can drill down into any of these hyperlinks figures just shown here. So with that, we'll go back to our key takeaways for the GL summary. Again, just make sure you always use that fiscal period and you're selecting exactly what it is that you're wanting to see and review, and you use that display account chart field checkbox as necessary. And for A funds, the life to date expenses equal the fiscal year to date. For non-A funds and for grant projects, the life to date is the true life of the fund. And of course, for grant projects, the life to date is the true life to date expenses for that project. We highly encourage you to use that % sign to pull in additional search values. And remember, you can drill down to any of these expenses, including payroll, And again, we're always going to refer you back to the grant dashboard when reviewing grants. So then that takes us to the last tool located within the Finance Intranet, and that's the GL activity. And it provides the same versatility as found in the GL summary, but this is at the detailed PeopleSoft transaction journal level. So the way that I think you'll notice that this is where we would be ported to every time we clicked on a link or a hyperlink. It would bring us to this page before taking us into PeopleSoft. So this is a great tool when you know exactly what you want to pull, or if you're not exactly sure, because there are so many functions that allow you to search. So in this example, I used the line description to find unemployment expense, because for this example, I was not sure how unemployment was being charged. I wasn't sure what account it was hitting, but I wanted to find out from my chemistry department, how much was I being charged for unemployment expense for the month of June. So I was able to use this tool to find that information. And sure enough, using that line description, it was able to pull all the unemployment expense. And then from there, I was able to find out, oh, it's hitting 51900, the fringe account. And this is all the expense associated with my unrestricted A fund. And then this is how much hit, this federal project and this federal project. And then it summarized all that information for me. Now we're going to go right into the GL activity. And demonstrate. So let's say, like we mentioned before, I wanted to know how much unemployment, because I didn't know how to find that information. I could use the line description to look that up, or to help me find specific transactions. And you'll notice that it started to populate because it's already doing that search for me. But I don't want just a specific date. I want to see all of it. And I'm going to pick June, just so we're consistent. And I'm going to hit submit. And as you can see, it gave me how much hit my unrestricted A funds. And then it started summarizing how much hit my E funds. And how much hit my F funds. And then there's all kinds of ways that you can summarize this. I could summarize it by project. I could put F1000 here. And see, now it's summarizing it by project for me right here to pull that information and show me. Now let's say I just want to know how much was charged to a Z fund for an entire month. One thing I could do, I'm going to keep June. I'm going to take out my line description. I'm going to do month to date. And I want all my expenses. So I'm going to do 5% so that it brings in all my expense accounts. Because I don't want to see all the other entries that are going on in the background. I just want to see what expenses are hitting this account. So I am going to hit submit for this particular fund. Oh, let me get rid of my total up here. And that's what it gave me. It gave me every transaction that occurred in June as it relates to expense. And it summarized it by the expense account code. So this C fund had $2,800 of direct expenses posted for the month of June. And again, I can see the line description of what was charged. I can get backup for those documents or for those expenses if I needed to by drilling down into each of these items. Now let's say I wanted to pull a range. Like I don't just want a month, I want a range. Let's say I want to pull for a whole year, 01, or for the first half of the year. So from the first of the year to 6/30. So I'm going to change this to life to date. And I got to make sure that I change my fiscal period, because if I leave it at June, it's going to cancel out what I asked it to do up there in the dates. So I need to change this to fiscal year 1920. And so now you'll notice that for the whole first half of the year, it pulled in everything. It pulled in all the transactions. So from January to 6/30, there was a little over $9,000 of direct expenses that were charged to this particular account. So that's just a couple of ways that you can use this. Again, you just got to be careful with how you're using these dates, because you don't want to cancel out what you're asking it to do by selecting a month over here, but then asking it to do a date range over here. So just make sure that you're paying attention to how you're using those dates. So then some key takeaways, pay attention to how you're using the fiscal year and fiscal period. And again, this is the drill down activity. So the hyperlinks here will take you directly into PeopleSoft or into HCM Distribution. And you can also look up specific transactions using the journal IDs. So for example, if you know exactly what you're looking for. For example, let's say you had that journal ID right here and you just wanted to look up that transaction. You didn't want to go through the whole process of drilling down through all the different screens. You could go directly to the GL activity and enter in that journal ID and pull up that specific transaction. You can use the line description and reference to help search for transactions. Like I said, if you're not exactly sure what it is you're looking for or what account it hits, you can use those additional search features to look for them. And then you can total, subtotal, and burst on this screen just like you can on the GL summary. And you can also use a date range to pull transaction activity, which is another nice feature here. So then that takes us back to the hub and to the second tool we're going to talk about today, and that's HCM Distribution. And the tool within HCM Distribution that we're going to talk about is HCM Payroll Distribution Search, and it's that very first link. So like I mentioned, this provides a listing of all the employees within the payroll system given a set of search parameters. So you can search by operating unit, by department, account code, earn code, which is described here as distribution code. You can look up a person by their employee or their USC ID. You can look up the employees hitting a specific project or cost shared to a specific project. And you can also select to and from pay periods, a fiscal month, or a fiscal year. So this is what the information will look like once you enter it in. In this example, we're showing payroll for operating unit CL071, and this is just shown by employee for the fiscal month of December. So you'll notice, the name, their USC ID, the fiscal period that's being charged or returned, their job code, their home department, and then one thing that I want to point out is their pay group. This is really important because the pay group will tell you whether or not they're paid current, on, or lag, and the pay period that they're being paid, check and check date, and then the combo code in the chart field. These are a 1-to-1 ratio, so this combo code is directly associated with this specific chart field. And so sometimes you'll notice that the chart field the combo code may change. So when you're comparing HCM distribution to like a time and effort report, the same depending on, the account code might be different. So it might, even though it's hitting the same project, it'll have a different combo code, but it's still hitting the same project. So just pay attention to the combo codes, because it could be the combo code that's causing it to return on like two different distribution lines. So I just want to throw that tip out there for business managers to pay attention. The labor dollar amount is the amount of salary charged. And then all of these lines out here, the tax, retire, life, health, the dental, those are the employer share of the fringe benefits. And this is the total amount of those fringe benefits. And this is the total amount of both salary and fringe together. And in this example, we're showing payroll by employee for a specific project. So you'll notice this is project 109070. And then this person is pay group C12, which is paid current. And you'll notice that there's a variety of paychecks and check dates because we have selected fiscal year all when asking HCM to return this data. So there are other ways to view the data. One of the features that we wanted to demonstrate for you guys is the sum adjustments checkbox. So it is this little checkbox right here. If you do not check that box, this is how the data would be returned. So if there are pink lines or retro funding change lines, so that means a change has been made, a retro funding change has occurred. So in this example, you can see the salary originally occurred and then it was subsequently removed. And it has happened or occurred several times. If you do not check that sum adjustments box, you'll see the in and out, the in and out, the in and out. But if you check that box, this is what that same data would look like. You would just see the net of that amount shown versus the in and out, in and out. The total at the bottom would still be the same. $4,800 is still the net amount on the account, just like it is here, right here. You just don't see the in and out. All you see is the net that's remaining. So it's a nice feature. It makes it look cleaner, the data look cleaner, and it's a little bit easier to interpret and review. So it is a nice feature for those that aren't aware that it's out there. Some other ways you can view the data is by looking at the fringe detail. The fringe detail vertical option will give you the actual account codes associated with and the descriptions of all the account codes. You'll notice here it'll give you, this is dental, this is basic long-term disability, and it'll also give you the account code associated with the actual earnings. So is it 51200? Is it 51300? And things of that nature. Fringes all hit 51900, but you'll notice on the face of HCM distribution, the chart string does not include the actual account code, but you can find that here, whether it's classified or unclassified, things of that nature. You can find that by using the vertical option. You also can do a fringe only report. In this example, this department wanted to know how much their A fund was being charged for fringes for the month of January, and they're able to do that by running a fringe only report. And this will only return fringes for all the employees listed within that department for that month. You can do the same thing for labor, and that's what this report is giving. It's just pulling labor for the same department A funds for the same month. So again, just different options for you to view the data. The one thing we do want to point out though is that it is super, super important for you to use fiscal year all in this drop-down button or option. And that's just to make sure that you're pulling all the information. So if there's been any retro adjustments to the account, things of that nature, that you're pulling in that data. So always make sure that the fiscal year notated says all. So again, key takeaways, like I mentioned before, when you're pulling the data, make sure that your fiscal year, that the selection says all. And again, that's just to make sure that you're getting all the results, just in case there's been any subsequent adjustments. And pay attention to the pay groups, because that will tell you if that person's paid on a lag or currently. And then remember that those pink lines represent retro funding changes. And use that sum adjustments checkbox to show the net amount on the account. So where can you find additional resources? At the beginning of the webinar, I showed you the Office of the Controller website. It's a great place. If you navigate to Grants and Funds Management, we have a whole webinars and training section. You can find a whole webinar just on HCM Payroll Distribution and the tool and how to use it. You can also find additional webinars on other aspects related, and this webinar will also be posted there. So feel free to navigate to the controller's website. There's a lot of good information out here. And then who can you contact if you have questions? If you have questions regarding grants, we always encourage you to reach out to your post award accountant. And then if you have other questions, you can reach out to the controller using this email address, and that's controller@sc.edu. So with that, we'll open it up for questions, and we just want to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us today.